to DemandTools Find Report IDs training. My name is Kelly Jenkins, and I'll be walking you through the Find Report IDs module today. And at a very high level, what Find Report IDs is, it's a matching tool, so it can match data in a spreadsheet to data in Salesforce. We're going to be walking through 4 very common examples, but before we get started, I do have some administrative things I want to talk about. And I want to start with logging into DemandTools. So, and that's the screen that I'm sharing right now. So when we log into DemandTools, we have 2 options. We have the Salesforce API option and the Salesforce OAuth option. When you log in using either option, it's looking for your Salesforce username and password. Okay, sometimes people think that you have a DemandTools specific password, and that's not the case. We're looking for Salesforce because we're logging into the Salesforce API. When you use the API login, you may need to copy and paste your security token behind your password. Okay, and that's going to depend on how the security is set up in your org. But if you try without it and it says, you try login and you need your token, a pop-up's going to come up that says user must use security token. Then you'll know to go look for that in your email sent from Salesforce. Both options are compatible with logging into a sandbox. If you want to log into a sandbox using the API login, you need to set up a custom endpoint in the upper right-hand corner of this screen. I popped this open, and here's the endpoint. I can show you where you can generate this, but it kind of remains the same once you do it. If you want to log into a sandbox, you just check the box to use custom endpoint, click OK. It's going to tell you to shut down DemandTools and relaunch. And when you relaunch, you're pointed to the sandbox, and you need to use your sandbox Salesforce username password, and if your company requires it, security token. And a note about that, your security token for your production org will be different than sandbox. The second option, the OAuth option, is much easier. I would always recommend using this because this is just like logging into the Salesforce user interface. There's no need for security tokens, and if you want to log into a sandbox, you just check a box down here on the lower part of the screen. So you don't need to generate an endpoint either. Okay, so we'll go ahead and log in. Oh, one last quick note about logging in. If you're an SSO user, you need to set your custom domain here, and when you do that, you'll be presented with your SSO login. Okay, but let me go ahead and log in here. And when you log in, actually I'm going to have to click allow here. When you log in, the screen that you're brought to, whoops, oh, that's fine. I was testing a different API, so you won't see that. So let's hope that it works. We'll see how this goes. When you log in, this is the screen that you're brought to. This is what we call the DemandTools Today page. Important things to note here are the version number. So the most recent version of DemandTools is 2.70.36. If you're not on the most current version, you will see an upgrade banner. If you see that upgrade banner, it will also provide a link on where you can upgrade. Please upgrade. We always recommend that you're running the latest version of DemandTools, and it is always free to upgrade. Also from this screen, we've got the self-help. So everything that I'm going to say today is out here for your reference. You can navigate the self-help, which encompasses all the documentation for all of the modules, or the module-specific documentation, which I'm kind of scrolling through our modules over here on the left, are in the green circles to the left. So if you wanted to get to the Find Report IDs module documentation, you can just click that there, that green circle, and it'll fire up. Also the live training. So I'm sure many of you are aware of how to register for live training. That's how you got here. But maybe somebody registered on your behalf, so I always like to let everybody know that we offer training on all of our tools and the modules within DemandTools. These classes are free to take. You can take them as many times as you'd like and as often as you'd like. Okay, and then the times are noted in East Coast time. But if you click into one of them and then go to register here, that's where you'll have the option to see in your time zone. Okay. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Like I said, we're going to be working through four examples. The first one's going to take the longest. And then the last three are really quick. So our first example is we're going to use this spreadsheet. It's a spreadsheet of accounts, and we're going to try to find these accounts in Salesforce. We're going to match this spreadsheet to Salesforce to try to see if they exist there. Nothing really earth-shattering to share about this file. I just think it's helpful for you guys to see it rather than working blindly with just column headers, which is all we're going to see through the the DemandTools user interface. But just typical address data, account name. It looks like I have a phone number in some cases. Okay. All right. So in the Find Report IDs module, the very first thing we want to do is read in that spreadsheet to DemandTools. We're going to do that by going to Select File. Luckily, it's the first one listed here. Okay. I'm working with an Excel file. Our tools are compatible with Excel, Access, and CSV. If you're working with Excel or Access, though, you need to tell it which tab or which table you want to use, even if you only have one. And you can do that by double-clicking. When I double-click, this red text appeared here, confirming that I have 11 records in that file. Now down here, I need to choose which object in Salesforce I want to compare this list to. We're going to compare to the accounts object. But you can have a file of anything and compare it to any object in Salesforce. These are all of my Salesforce objects, including my custom objects. My custom objects are suffixed with __C. Okay, but we're going to stick to standard tables for the sake of this demo, so we'll use accounts and use object. And this column's going to appear here. And what I need to do is select the fields that I want reported back to me when it finds a match from the spreadsheet to Salesforce. We're not actually going to do the matching till we get to the next screen. This is just in the event that it does find a match, what Salesforce fields do I want reported back to me? So I guess let's grab some of the same ones so we can confirm our matching is behaving as we expect. And they're appearing here as I select them. We can also add additional data, so maybe I want the account type, for example. And maybe I want to know the account owner. So I can bring in the owner ID, which is the value that actually resides on the account record. But that doesn't tell me much, right? So anywhere you see a plus sign, that is a table join to a parent table. Okay, so the key there is we can grab data from a parent table, but not a child table. That's just the way the database is structured. So if I push the plus sign, I can get to the attributes of the user object, and I can say I want to see the owner.name. And it adds to the end of the list here. These columns that I've selected, they're going to appear as columns when it finds the matches. So we're going to see billing city in the first column, country in the second, and I guess we start the numbering at 0, which is a little strange, but anyway, first, second, third. You can reorder these just by dragging and dropping. Okay, so now I'm going to see the account name in position 1, type in position 2, put this in an address information in an order that makes more sense. Okay. And in addition, let me just say one other thing. When it finds a match, not only will these columns be displayed to me now in this order, I will also subsequently be exporting the data, and the columns will now be in this order in the exported spreadsheet. Okay, and that's important to understand, because if they're not in the order you want to see them, once it's in Excel, right, then you got to start copying and pasting columns, and that's a pain. And now we proceed to step 2. The top half of the screen is a where clause or a condition, and the lower half of the screen is where we're going to match the spreadsheet to Salesforce. So we got 2 things going on here. Circling back to the top half, the radio button is selected for Use All, which means it's going to compare this spreadsheet to all of my account records in Salesforce. But if I only want to compare it to some records in Salesforce, I can do so by using conditions. Okay, and in our example, we're going to only compare this to records in the state of Arizona. So when I selected this radio button, this ungrayed out. These are my account fields, and I can add a condition based on an attribute of the accounts. So I can say the billing state equals Arizona. And this is not case sensitive. You don't have to have that proper cased. And then when I add the condition, it drops to the bottom. And actually, I've been messing around with my data, so I'm not exactly sure how the states are represented in my org. So we're going to change this, actually. So I'm going to say billing state equals Arizona or AZ, because I know I was doing some testing, playing around with the way that states are represented. So when you need to or within a field, the syntax there, I know it's awfully small on your screen, but it says Arizona, comma, no space, AZ. And now I want to update the condition. Okay. Working with one condition is really straightforward. It's only going to compare to records in Salesforce where the state has one of these 2 values. We can work with multiple conditions, though. And I always like to show owner as an example because it is a common thing that people add conditions around. So I can query on the owner ID if I have that handy, and DemandTools will accept the 15-digit or 18-digit ID from Salesforce. But we've built in the conversions here for you. So you can query on owner alias or owner name, and it's going to give you a pick list-like interface. These boxes get really small. I have a really small screen, so you can kind of hover over these lines and move them around to make this a little bit bigger. So if I wanted to say owner name equals Mark Esdale, when I add the condition and it drops to the bottom, it just converted it to the ID for me. I have a small org, right? It's not a big deal for me to scroll through this list of users. We have about, what, 20, 25 users? But we have a lot of customers who have hundreds and thousands of users. If you need to filter this list, because it's just too big to scroll, you can right-click and filter list. And this does a contains within the name field. So if I say name contains Mark, it's going to show me all the users that contain the word Mark. To get my full list back, I need to right-click and reset. And that'll bring my full list back. Okay. So when we work with more than one condition, the default behavior is to AND. So it's going to query records or match the spreadsheet in Salesforce, or the spreadsheet to records in Salesforce where the billing state equals Arizona or AZ and is owned by Mark Esdale. If I need to OR the conditions together, I can do so by turning on the expert mode. And when I check this box, this column appeared here on the right-hand side, allowing me to create OR groups. So I can, conditions with the same number are ANDed, so we're still ANDed. But if I click in here, change the number, and click off the row, I've just OR'd them. And now it's going to compare this spreadsheet to records in Salesforce where the billing state equals AZ or Arizona or owned by Mark Esdale. And I do like to take the filtering discussion just a little bit further because it's different in DemandTools than it is in Salesforce, and that's what you guys are used to is filtering in Salesforce. So in Salesforce, you can do something like this. You can say condition 1 or condition 2, and outside of those parentheses, have a condition 3. You can do this in DemandTools. It just doesn't look like this because we don't have the ability to use parentheses. So let's say we want to query records. Condition 1 is the state is Arizona, condition 2 is owned by Mark Esdale, and condition 3 is type of prospect. What that looks like in our tools is I'd actually add the type field, or the type condition, type, there it is. Type condition equals prospect, and let me make this bigger so we can see it. Okay, prospect, and I actually add it twice, once for each OR group. And essentially what I did there is I distributed that and 3 to inside the parentheses. Okay. We're not going to do that though. We're going to stick with our one condition of Arizona. So to remove conditions here or anywhere else in the tool, we have a lot of users get stuck here. You want to push the blue box to the left of the condition and push delete on the keyboard. I think a lot of people try to right-click delete and they get stuck that way. There is no right-click delete in DemandTools. Now in the lower half of the screen, this is where we're actually going to do the matching from the spreadsheet to Salesforce. And it does default to give me one match step, but you'll see we'll add others. So we'll be able to match this spreadsheet to Salesforce many different ways. But starting with the first match step, this is where I'm going to tell DemandTools what a match is between the spreadsheet and Salesforce. So I'm going to add a mapping condition, and I want to require the name in the input file to match the name in Salesforce. And I want to match the billing street in the spreadsheet to the billing street in Salesforce. And finally, we'll do postal code. Okay, so I've just defined what a match is from the spreadsheet to Salesforce. I'm requiring name, street, and postal code match for it to be reported back to me. When I match on these 3 fields, there must be a value in these fields in Salesforce and in my spreadsheet, and they must match. They don't need to exactly match. We'll talk about mapping types in a moment. The bigger picture that I'm trying to convey right now is that when I match on a field, the default behaviors, there must be a value in both sources. We do, however, have this option to turn on match blank values. And what match blank values does, if I were to turn this on for postal code, for example, it will match, it could match possibly 2 different ways. The first is where all 3 are populated in both sources and match. The second possibility is where the name and street are populated in both sources and match, and the postal code is blank on both, the spreadsheet and Salesforce. What a lot of people confuse match blank values to mean, so I want to be clear what it doesn't mean here, is if I check this box, it will match if the spreadsheet has a phone number. I'm sorry, this isn't phone number. If the spreadsheet has a postal code and Salesforce doesn't, or vice versa. Okay, so this only matches if both are blank. Now, mapping types allow us to match our fields without doing exact matching. Exact is the default, but this is a drop-down. We can, the go-to mapping type for matching account names is what we call the cleaned account name mapping type. It references this list in the middle of the screen. And in here we've got 3 tabs, the replace tab. So it's going to find the values on the left and replace it with the values on the right. And that is only occurring in the analysis of the data. It's not changing the data in Salesforce or my spreadsheet. But for example, if the spreadsheet that has an account called Mercy Hospital, but in Salesforce it's called Mercy Hosp, or vice versa, so it works both directions, it will detect the match. This list ships from this blue line up. These values below I've added, so you can customize this list so that it works with your data. When adding values to this list, you'd come to the bottom. It's important to understand that you want to put the long version of the word in the left and the shorter version in the right. Next, the suffix removal ignores these words at the end of the field in both sources. So if I have a spreadsheet value of IBM Co., but that's in Salesforce as IBM Company, IBM Inc., IBM Incorporated, IBM anything down this list, it will detect the match. This list ships from PLC up. These values below I've added. Next, the prefix removal will ignore these words at the beginning of the field in both sources. And this list ships as is. I haven't thought of anything to add to it. If you're a dedupe user or have been through dedupe training, sometimes people ask, is this the same list that I use in my dedupe tools? The answer to that is yes. The cleaned account name mapping type is not module specific. Billing street, we have a mapping type for that. Street address match standardizes directionals and street designations, understands N is north, W is west, ST is street, DR drive. Postal code matching, we have a zip 5 and 9 match for US zip codes. If you're working with international data, I do find that it's pretty benign. And what I mean when I say that is it will still find matches if it's not in the US format. For all intents and purposes, you can think of it as matching the first 5 characters of the zip code. Now, in addition to our mapping types, we have these matching algorithms on the right we can apply. Fuzzy is a phonetic match. It ignores vowels and analyzes the sounds of the remaining consonants. It's great for finding spelling errors. Transpose does not care about word order in a field, just that all words exist. And to be clear, that's at the word level, not the letter level. Sometimes people think it goes down to the letter level. It's not that granular. Alpha clean only analyzes the English alphabet, A through Z, and numbers 0 through 9. It's going to ignore foreign characters and punctuation. Okay. So records that match this way will be reported back to me. Then we can match again. So I'm going to clone. There's a clone button here. I'm going to clone this match step. It does call it clone match 1, which I don't care for. We're just going to call it match 2. And let's compare the spreadsheet to Salesforce a different way. So cleaned account name's great, but it's not going to find all of your account matches. So let's try a different mapping type. Let's try match the first XX words. So this is really useful when you have incomplete names, account names, or people who put things behind dashes. Like maybe in this spreadsheet I have Bank of America dash mortgages. That's how the person filled out the form or whatever. But that's in Salesforce as Bank of America. Cleaned account name's not going to detect that because I don't know to go put mortgages in my cleaned account list in the previous step. So matching the first few words is always worthwhile. And records that match this way will now be reported back to me. Then we can clone it again. We'll call this match 3. For account matching, I like to point out that we have an acronym match. This matches IBM to International Business Machines, DOE to Department of Education. It is not, however, referencing a table in DemandTools where we have coded DOE equals Department of Education. It's analyzing the first letter of every word in the field in both sources. So it's pretty loose, right? I could have a record in my spreadsheet that's in the same office building as a record in Salesforce, and those two companies just so happen to have the same acronym. So I might even want to rename this or add to it review, so I know to review any matches because it's pretty loose. When we have our multiple match steps, we definitely want to start with our more rigid at the top and loosen as you go down. Okay, so the looser steps in the bottom. We don't limit how many match steps you can have. You could keep going, exhaust every way you can think of to match this spreadsheet to Salesforce. I am going to stop here, though, so that we can get through what we need to get through today. And just one more note about all these mapping types and matching algorithms. These little circles are help icons, and you can hover over them. And I always like to show the ones that help with the mapping because that's a lot to remember. So number 7 on this screen will provide a link to the help documentation that defines and gives examples of all of those mapping types. When I was an admin, I just printed this out and had it at my desk. Okay. Right, okay, so somebody was asked a question for clarification on match blank values. And you're absolutely correct. It only matches if both are blank, not one or the other. Correct. So it's match blank values is not going to match where one has a postal code and one does not if I check this box. It's only where both are blank or both are populated. Okay. All right, now let's go to step 3 and tell it to find matches over here on the right. And when you come in here for the first time, it's not going to be grouped. I have mine grouped. What we're looking at here, this data right here from Billing City to the right, this is my spreadsheet data, and here are 2 columns appended by CRMfusion. I like to group my grid by the number of matches that it found, dragging it up, so I can see in my spreadsheet that this record did not match any records in Salesforce. This record in my spreadsheet matched 3 records in Salesforce. Hold on, make these a little bit bigger. 3 records in Salesforce, but distinctly once. Okay, so this results grid is a little bit confusing, and I admit that. So it found it 3 times, but distinctly once. So what that means, let's push the plus sign. It found the same record in match 1, match 2, and match 3. And I can see that because the IDs are the same. These are live links, by the way. If I wanted to go look at this record in Salesforce, I could do that. Now, while we do report back to you every single match step that record was matched in, when we subsequently export this file, it's never going to export a list of duplicates for me, right? Like it's not going to export this record 3 times. It'll only do it once, and you'll see that when we get there. But so this record right here, TRW Automotive, was found 4 times, but distinctly twice. Okay, so if we push the plus sign, we can see 1 record was found, and by the way, this is the Salesforce data. I asked it to report back to me, but it was found once in match step 1 and 2, and then there was another one found in step 3 using the acronym match, because these first 2 matching where we use cleaned account name and match first 3 words did not match to this. So that's the benefit of having those multiple match steps and trying to find the records, the various ways they can be represented. Let's take a look at this. It was found 9 times, but distinctly 4 times. So it looks like universal crane inspection was found. It found these 3 records using the cleaned account name. It looks like it found the same 3 records using the first XX words equals 3. Then in the acronym match, it found 2 of those same records, but then it also found UCI, but it looks like the address data is exactly the same. Okay, so that looks like it might be a good match. When we subsequently export this, we have 2 options. There's the multiple matches per line of export. We're going to actually look at this in a later example. Essentially, if it found more than 1 match, it puts it all in the same row in different columns to the right. The preferred option really is single match per line of export. If multiple matches were found, they each get their own row in the spreadsheet, and using that spreadsheet tends to be a little bit easier. So we'll look at it both ways. Starting with single match per line of export, our options then become to write the first match only. So in this example here, where it found it 3 times, it's only going to write out that first one right here. You could write all unique matches from the first match step. And let's pick one where we found, let's go back to that, let's go back to, I think it was universal inspection. So if we write all unique matches from the first match step, it's going to write out these 3 records. Or write all unique matches from all match steps, which means it'll write out the 4 distinct records that or unique records that it found. The other thing that's nice about the single match per line of export, the records that didn't match anything in Salesforce go into their own file. That's what the save file of non-matches means. So it actually splits it out for you. So let's use this write unique matches from all match steps, export data. Let's put it on the desktop. I'll call it account matches. It is going to default to want to put it in a CSV file. That works great. I prefer Excel. So let's export it to Excel. And then this box pops up with the links to the matched file and the non-matched file. I'm going to open the non-matched file first because it's going to be real quick. All that's in here is my original spreadsheet data for the 1 record that it didn't match anything in Salesforce. The match file, on the other hand, what we're looking at here, columns A through G are my spreadsheet data. H and I are the number of matches and unique matches that it found. You know, which match step it found it in, the name of the match step. Columns N through U, these are the fields from Salesforce I asked it to export if it found a match. So, and also it prefaces that with match underscore name, type, owner, and so on. Column M, though, I didn't ask for the ID, right? I didn't, in my screen 1, ask for the ID. We are going to give you the ID whether you ask for it or not. Some people love it, some people hate it. When I was an admin, I loved it because I always forgot to select that in step 1, and then I wouldn't have the ID, and that was before they gave it to you automatically. But when it exports the ID, it is always going to just call it match ID. It is up to me to know that I match to accounts. And you know, Salesforce standard tables have prefixes, so you know 001 is an account. I've gotten into the habit, though, of just renaming this pretty much immediately, because when I use it somewhere else, whether it be Mass Effect because I want to update these records or wherever, I'm only going to see the column header. And if it just says match ID, it's hard to know that I grabbed the right file. So I'm going to call that account ID, and then I'm going to save it, save it, save it. And our next exercise is going to be, okay, well, now that we found these accounts, I want to know if there's any contacts on these accounts. This is a very common exercise. People have a list of accounts, and they want to know if there's contacts on those accounts. So we're going to go back to DemandTools. And these next three exercises go very, very fast because we're going to be doing ID matching. Okay, so let's read in our matched accounts. Since it's Excel, I need to double-click the tab. Now, in this case, the object to use is I want to compare to contacts. Contacts. Use object. And now I'm being presented a list of my contact fields, and I need to tell it which fields I want reported back to me when it finds a match. So let's just grab you know, standard stuff: first name, last name, email. And by the way, I'm pushing the letter, so email, I push E on the keyboard, so if I want to grab the phone, I'm going to push P, and it takes me to the top of the Ps. We are often asked, is there a search in here where I can search for a specific field? No, the closest you're going to get is by pushing the letter on your keyboard. So if I wanted to go to my M's, I could do that. Okay, but we'll just have these fields reported back to us. In step 2, the top half of the screen, we're going to use a condition again, and we're only going to compare the spreadsheet to contacts where the account billing state equals AZ or Arizona. It's an example of showing where you can add a condition based on an attribute of a parent object. So that table join is here, and so I can say the account.billing state equals Arizona or AZ. Okay. Now in the lower half of the screen, we're going to tell it how to match, and in this case, what we're going to do, so my input column, here's a list of my column headers. This is why I get in the habit of renaming that, because if it just says match ID, it's kind of hard to know. We're going to match the account ID in the spreadsheet to the account ID on the contact, because that is the value that resides on the contact. And in my case, I'm going to use the exact mapping type. So not everybody is aware that Salesforce has two IDs. So I like to have this discussion. They have a 15-digit ID and they have an 18-digit ID. The 15-digit ID is the ID that is available through the Salesforce user interface. Okay, so if I'm in Salesforce and I go to my sales, or let's just, I think I deleted all of these. Oh, okay, we got one, right? So if you were to count these, there's 15. And that's the ID that's available here or via a Salesforce report. The 18-digit ID is the Salesforce API ID. And all it is, if we can go back to our account match, it is the 15-digit with an additional, with an additional 3 characters at the end. Okay. My file has the 18-digit ID because when we use DemandTools, we're logging into the Salesforce API. Therefore, it gave me the API ID. So when I do matching, because I've got the 18-digit in my spreadsheet, matching to the 18-digit in Salesforce, I'm going to use the exact mapping type. However, if my input file only has the 15-digit ID, you need to use a mapping type called Salesforce.com ID match. This mapping type converts that 15-digit to the 18-digit. Okay, so if you're doing ID matching and you go to step 3 and you don't find any matching, it's very common. We get a lot of cases on this. They didn't use the correct mapping type. But in my case, we're going to go ahead and change it back to exact because I have the 18-digit in my spreadsheet. So now let's go to step 3 and find matches. Okay, so it looks like a majority of these didn't have any contacts on them, right? So I can minimize that. And these accounts have one contact. There's the contact data. I asked it to report back to me. This one has 2. So again, we're going to use the single match per line of export file. We'll look at the next multiple in the next example. Now, we can write the first match only. So in the event of this one, it's only going to write out Jerry Bailey. But these next 2 become the same because I had one match step and it was an ID match, right? So I'm always going to have a one-to-one relationship between the number of matches and the number of unique matches. So I could write all unique matches from the first match step or all unique matches from all match steps. It's not going to matter. So let's export this and put it on the desktop. Okay, and there's my 2 files. The non-matches are going to be that big group where no contacts were found. And then here's the matched file. And when you do matches upon matches, like we did an account match. Now we did a contact match based off of that account match. This file can get pretty ugly. So what we're looking at here, columns A through G, these are the original 2 spreadsheets ago fields. Then my old account match stuff all has the word old put in it somewhere. So these are all of the data from the account match. And then we come to column V, I believe. Yeah, V, and here's the contact information that that was just exported. Columns A, B through A, E are the fields I asked it to export. And here we are, column AA. There's my match ID, which is 003 are contact IDs, but let's just rename this contact ID. And just to clean it up a little bit, because we don't need this old stuff anymore, our next exercise, we're actually going to build upon what we just exported. So let's just right-click and delete that. Okay, so our next exercise, now that we have a list of contacts, we want to know if it's on any, these contacts are on any campaigns. And this example is an example of using a junction table. So a junction table brings together two tables that have a many-to-many relationship. I used a campaign member because it is the standard one that most people understand if you use campaigns. But I can take this list of contacts and find the campaign information. I could also have a list of campaigns and find the contacts that are on that campaign. That's the nice thing about junction tables, right? It's links to two. So let's save this and go back to Demand Tools. Let's read in our contact match file. Double click as I like Excel. Now in this case, we're going to compare to the campaign member object. Okay, so here are my campaign member fields, but notice there's like a plus sign next to campaign. So we're going to, in our exercise, we're going to actually export information about the campaign. So maybe we want the campaign name, the campaign start date, status, type, I think that's a good start. And also maybe I want the campaign ID. Now, since this isn't, if I need the campaign ID, in this case I do explicitly have to ask for it because the campaign member ID is what's going to be in that match ID column. This one right here. Conversely, if I had a list of campaigns, I could match and export attributes about the contacts. Okay, but that's not the case in our example. We want the campaign information. Now in step 2, I guess in this example we won't use a where clause because I don't think I have so many campaign member records that we're going to be sitting here staring at match for a while. But again, we're going to do ID matching. The input column is going to be my contact ID, and the field to match is going to be the contact ID. And in my case, because I have the 18-digit in my spreadsheet, I'm going to use the exact mapping type. And find matches. Or maybe I do have so many campaign member records that it's going to take a minute. Oh, I guess 35,000, not that bad. Okay, so here are the results. So it looks like this contact, which we're looking at the spreadsheet data, it does get kind of ugly. Poppy's on 0 campaigns. Encore is on 1 campaign. Push the plus sign. Here's the campaign information I asked it to report back to me, including the campaign ID. So notice the campaign ID is different than the campaign member ID. These people who we have down here, Jerry and Sarah, it looks like they are on 3 campaigns. So let's export this, and let's use the multiple matches per line of export file just so you can see what it looks like. When we use this option, we actually do have a limit on how many we can export, and that limit is 10. So you can see it's not increasing past 10. So if I had a contact that was on 11 campaigns, I can only write out up to the first 10. So that's one limitation that I don't have in this example, but it does exist. So, and when we use this option, we can only write out all unique matches from the first match step or all unique matches from all matched steps. Again, I had 1 match step doing an ID match, so I'm going to have a one-to-one relationship here. But let's export the data so you can see what this looks like. Okay, I get 1 export file, so it doesn't put that one into a separate file for me where it didn't match to anything. It's actually going to be in this file. So let's hide this old stuff. Okay. So we're still back to the columns A through F. Those are the original spreadsheet data from when we first started. But here's what we have over here. So this contact, which I hid the contact information, but was found on 2 campaigns. That's what this is telling me. It's the number of matches right there. And here's match 1, the campaign member ID, so we're calling that match ID. The name, the campaign start date, status, and type. Okay, that's match 1. Now we come to match 2. So this is what I'm saying. Each match doesn't get its own line, right? They're all in the same line in columns to the right. So that one had 2. It looks like these 2 below had 3, were on 3 campaigns. and this person was on 1 campaign. Now that person who was on 0 campaigns, they're still in this file. It's just they have no data. Okay. This used to be the only way you could export them. That's why it's selected as the default option. But since they introduced the other way, I don't know how much people really use this option anymore. In our final exercise, we're going to circle back to our account matches. Hopefully I still have that spreadsheet open. Okay, we're going to circle back to this spreadsheet, our account matches. And what we want to do is we actually want to compare this spreadsheet and compare it to the account team member object to get a list of the team members. The reason I go through this exercise, especially around this time of year where people are realigning account teams, right? So account team members cannot be reparented. You must delete them and then insert new team members. That's a Salesforce thing. And what we see a lot of people try to do when they delete the account teams is use the user ID. And you can't do that. You need the account team member ID. So that's what we're going to do now. We're going to go find the team members and get that team member ID for a subsequent exercise to delete it, either using Mass Effect or the data loader or whatever. But I'm going to show you how you get that correct ID. We've gotten this case like 3 times already this week. So let's go back to Demand Tools. We're going to read in our found accounts again. There it is. .28 records, and we are going to compare to the account team member object. Team members are users in your org, so likely you want to get the information about the user. So I'm going to use this table join to get maybe the email and the person's name. I don't need to ask for the ID, the team member ID, because again, it's going to give it to me whether I ask for it or not. If I were to select it here, see, I don't even like to because it's actually going to put duplicate columns in my file. So I always just let it do it naturally. In step 2, we're going to use our standard where clause where the account billing state equals Arizona or AZ. So that plus sign allows me access to the account fields, and I'm going to say account billing state equals Arizona or AZ. And by the way, the reason I've been doing this, using this where clause throughout these demos, just because this is a big database, and while Demand Tools is really quick, even just kind of staring at it matching for 2 minutes, that isn't a good use of our time. So I'm just limiting the data using this where clause. All right, so down here we're going to add a mapping condition, and we're going to say, oh, look, I exported that 20 minutes ago, and I wouldn't have remembered that was the account ID, so I renamed it. Yay me. Now let's go match that to the account ID on the team member. Exact mapping type, because I have the 18-digit in my spreadsheet. And now let's go to step 3, find matches. And here are the results. So it looks like, excuse me, my Universal Crane does not have any team members. These accounts have 1. When I push the plus sign, I see the user data I asked it to bring back and the account team member ID. Okay, this is the ID you need to delete if you need to do this exercise, not the user ID. Okay, so looks like down here the TRW Automotive account has 5 team members, and there are the IDs. So if we export this, let's do all unique matches. Again, going to be the same. It doesn't matter which one I select here. Let's do it to CSV. Why not? Account team member IDs. Matched file. Let's hide all that. So here's the account team member information. Again, we called it match ID. We'll call this account team member ID. And now I've got them all in a file that I can delete some other way. Find report IDs isn't going to actually execute the deletion. It just finds and reports the IDs. Okay. And that completes the exercises that I had planned. If you have any questions, go ahead and start typing them. I just have a few closing statements. Back to the Today page. Your tools are supported. If you need to reach out to us, you can do so via the tech support tile. In here, we've got a form you can fill out. But let's say you can't get logged into DemandTools. Let me show you another place where you can access that. So if you go to our website, the very first tab is Support, and that's Open a Technical Case. Okay, same form, different place to locate it. If you're within NFP, unfortunately, we did have to end direct technical support for our not-for-profit granted users. That program just became too big to support. But if you're within NFP, I would still recommend you reach out to us because we will send you back a canned email, and that email contains links where you can get additional assistance. So maybe rather than trying to find those on your own, we can just shoot them right back to you. One of those resources being where am I lost? Here it is, the knowledge base. So if you get any errors in your log file or you see any errors, you can search them here, or just kind of how-tos. I don't even know what we got out there. Find IDs. Let's just see what we can find here. Not a lot on find report IDs, but here's a topic, account team members. We've got solutions on how to do this. Reassigning account team members. So we've got a few solutions out there on how you can do that. Okay. And I haven't seen any questions come in, so I'm going to give you guys 3 minutes of your day back. Well, wait, I have one other thing to say. The session was recorded. If you want a copy of the recording, you can just email me directly. You can respond to like a confirmation email, or you'll be getting a follow-up email in an hour. Just reply to that. I'll pick that up and send it out when it's done converting. Okay? All right. Well, thank you for joining me, and have a good afternoon, or I guess morning, depending on where you're at. Bye-bye.